Hey there guys, I am the Sixth Machine and welcome back to another Warhammer video. Today we're having another 40k unit overview and review, and this time I wanted to take a step away from the Dark Angels which I've done previously and look at one of the more generic Codex Marine units. So with that in mind, I thought we would take a look at the Primaris Inceptors. As always, we'll be taking a look at their profile, their abilities, their war gear, their weapons, and then thinking about which chapters or stratagems work well with them before trying to come to a decision about whether they are worth a spot in your lists. Now, Inceptors come in with a squad size of 3 to 6, have a movement of 10 inches, weapon and ballistic skill of 3+, strength 4, toughness 5, a solid 3 wounds, 2 attacks, leadership 7 and a 3-up save. And obviously the sergeant comes with that extra attack and leadership, putting him up to 3 and 8 respectively. And you get all of that for a base cost of 40 points, not 45 like I think the Warhammer app still shows because it's still wrong, but what that means is you are essentially getting 1 toughness 5, 3-up save wound for under 15 points, which really isn't too bad considering their above average movement and their ability to survive a lot of light enemy firepower. Your opponent will certainly have to dedicate some reasonably solid heavy 3 damage or d6 damage firepower to really reliably get rid of them, so if nothing else they can also act as a nice distraction carnifex to take some heat off your vehicles and other heavier units. In terms of their abilities, Angels of Death is once again present for them, giving them and they shall know no fear, which lets them ignore combat attrition modifiers for the unit, which is rather nice for such an expensive model if you are bringing a full squad of 6. It obviously won't come into play with a 3-man minimum squad, but for those larger squads it could help you save a whole 40-point model, which is very useful indeed. Bolter Discipline is unfortunately wasted on these guys, as although they do come with bolter weapons in their base profile, they are assault and not rapid fire, so you are not getting to double tap with them anyway. And to be fair with these guys, if you're deep striking them in, you would probably be within half range anyway, so it's not like even if they were rapid fire, this would end up making a huge difference most of the time. Shock Assault, on the other hand, is actually a reasonable little bonus, giving them an extra attack and letting a 3-man minimum squad do 10 attacks on the charge, but on the other hand, this is a squad which has no melee weapons to speak of and has the movement to really stay away from combat if you want to, so you should pretty much never be charging with Inceptors if you can help it, and you should also be able to avoid most enemy charges if you plan appropriately. And then finally in the Angels of Death rule we have Combat Doctrines, which does actually provide a really nice benefit for your Inceptors. As we will see in a moment, both of their weapon options are assault, so when you hit the Tactical Doctrine, both varieties of weapon are going to be getting a nice bump up in their damage output, with the regular bolter variant going from -1 AP to -2, and the plasma variant going from -3 to -4, which is extremely handy for bypassing those 3-up armor saves. Overall, I think Inceptors do benefit quite nicely from Angels of Death, but as usual, it is the Combat Doctrines part of it that really gives them the meat of their bonuses from this combined set of rules. The Inceptors do also come with the Combat Squads rule, meaning that if you take a full 6, you can choose to split them into 2 3-man squads, essentially saving yourself a fast attack slot in your list. It's probably a good idea to do this if you do want to take 6, it gives you a bit more board presence and control, and also forces your opponent to split up their fire a lot more, and on top of that it also has the added benefit of meaning you are below the blast threshold of 6, which means that your enemy blast weapons aren't going to be getting the minimum of 3 shots against you. However, to counter that, I would also say that in my opinion, one squad of 5 works better than either a squad of 6 or 2 squads of 3. It still puts you below that blast threshold, gives you a tiny bit of saving in that you're only taking 5 models instead of 6, gives you 15 toughness 5 wounds to get through, which is quite hard for a lot of enemy armies to actually get enough wounds through to wipe them out in one single turn. And obviously when it comes to things like stratagems and support like that, it's one bigger unit, so you do get a net benefit by just doing the one stratagem on a 5-man squad instead of a 3-man squad. And then finally, the other rule that they come with is Death from Above, which is a key ability for them, and one which also annoyingly doesn't appear to be in the 40k app for some reason, but you know, whatever. But that lets them set up in deployment off the board, ready to come in turn 2, so that they are not only safe from enemy shooting turn 1, but you can get them right where they need to be on your turn 2. And I think the real benefit for this is that you can drop them right into a danger zone or somewhere where their firepower is going to be really beneficial, with the bolter variants maybe in front of a huge horde of gaunts or guardsmen or orcs, where they can just use their weight of fire to just smash through the enemy horde. Or if you've gone for the plasma inceptors, you know, you can put them next to a vehicle and just completely unload into it and do a huge amount of damage. Or even things like bikers or terminators or that heavy elite infantry that plasma inceptors will really do a number on. I would say that they are arguably too expensive to be considered a true suicide squad if you bring them in a squad size of 5 or so, but the fact that you can bring them down and unleash an absolute torrent of plasma into like a big squad of Terminators or a couple of vehicles or even an Imperial Knight, they should almost always, especially if you overcharge, make their points back in that one huge salvo. So if you advance up a buffing character like a captain or a lieutenant as well to get the most out of those shots and try and avoid the ones so that you don't kill your guys when you overcharge your plasma, you should almost certainly be able to at minimum make your points back from a squad of 5 Inceptors if you choose the right positioning on the board. And in terms of their actual damage output, you can take these guys, as I said, with 2 different forms of firepower. The first stock loadout is with 2 assault bolters, which let you fire 6 shots per marine, 3 with each gun, at strength 5, -1 AP, 1 damage, and an 18-inch range. And as I said, with being assault weapons, this goes to -2 AP in the tactical doctrine, so if you do decide to keep these guys in reserve, you bring them down in turn 2, and that is a 6-man squad potentially pumping out 36 shots at AP -2. So even against things like intercessors, that's going to be doing 10 wounds, so you'll wipe out a 5-man combat squad. Or against things like Terminators with storm shields, that's still just over 5 wounds. So with some slightly above average rolling, or you've moved up a captain or a lieutenant nearby, you could be killing a couple of Terminators with these guys the turn that they deep strike in. And then of course they are only strength 5, so they're less good against vehicles, but still you're putting about 5 wounds onto a Predator chassis, which isn't terrible. And then against the scary Drukhari meta at the moment, with average rolling, you should just about kill an enemy Venom, even with that -1 to hit protection that it has. So you can bring them down and do a good solid bit of damage with them. And the assault bolters are obviously better against lighter units. Pushing 36 shots into a horde of gaunts or even the new toughness 5 orc boys will get you a lot of bang for your buck. But if you are intent on going after heavier infantry or vehicles, then the Inceptor's other weapon option may be the one you want to look at, and that is the Plasma Exterminator. And the Plasma Exterminator has the same 18-inch range as the Assault Bolter, but instead of a flat 3 shots, each of these is Assault D3 with Strength 7, -3 AP, 1 damage and Blast, with, as you would expect from a plasma weapon, the option to overcharge into Strength 8 and 2 damage. This option does bump the price of your Inceptors up to a very hefty 60 points per model, so you may not want to spend too much time overcharging unless you have a handy captain nearby for those rerolls, but it does mean that you have a huge amount of targets that are now genuinely terrified of your firepower. And again, being assault weapons, it means that if you bring these guys down in turn 2, they are going to be -4 AP on their shots, so you can absolutely melt through 3-up saves. And just for reference, a squad of these guys dropping in turn 2 will on average do 13 unsaved wounds to a marine profile if they overcharge, and at 2 damage a pop, that's 13 dead marines. Or alternatively, you could do a whopping 21 damage to a toughness 7 3-up save Predator style profile. And then on the flip side of this, the other benefit of the plasma version is that they are blast. So if you are in range of a huge squad of 30 orc boys, then with blast you're still going to be getting that full 36 shots, and there isn't even a need to overcharge. And if you fire them at that previously mentioned 30-man Orc boy squad, even with toughness 5, you can expect to wipe out a full 16 Orc boys, and pretty much guarantee that they're going to lose a heck of a lot more to morale and attrition at the end of the turn. So yes, while the plasma option is a lot more expensive, it turns a 6-man squad from a 240 point investment to a 300 point one. It does honestly give you so much more flexibility in your targets, and you really can reliably go after anything from guardsmen to Imperial Knights and anything in between that, and not feel like you are completely wasting your shots. When it comes to stratagems for the Inceptors, the base Marine Codex has a few which are of possible use. Transhuman Physiology is, as always, a great pick on any Primaris unit, and even at toughness 5, a lot of weapons will still be wounding these guys on 3s or 2s, so making sure that they stick around that much longer, especially when you have a squad of 5 or 6, is really important. Because while they can be kept reasonably safe from enemy shooting turn 1 using the death from above rule, so you can guarantee that you're going to get at least one devastating shooting phase from them, it is very likely that a heck of a lot of your enemy's firepower will be directed towards them in the following turn, and if you want to keep them alive just to do some more firepower in the subsequent turns, it's definitely worth keeping a few CP back to put Transhuman on them to make it that much harder for your opponent to get rid of them. It's also worth noting that this is only 1 CP on a squad of 5 or less, so that alongside the bit of extra safety from the blast special rule does mean that, again, it's maybe a better idea to run these guys in squads of either 3 or 5 rather than going for the full 6 in order to maximize their durability and the price that you need to pay to protect them. Another way to keep them safe is the new Stratagem of Unyielding in the face of the foe, which for 1 CP lets you select a gravis armour unit, and they can add 1 to any saving throws that they make against 1 damage weapons. So this, alongside Transhuman Physiology, means that you can massively skyrocket the durability of your Inceptors against both the heavy multi-damage weapons like a Strength 6 or Strength 7 or 8 weaponry, as well as the high rate of fire bolters and las guns and splinter cannons that your opponent may try to aim your way. Uncompromising fire is another very useful stratagem, essentially letting you, for 2 CP, do an action such as raising the banners and still fire all of your shots, thus letting your Inceptors fill a crucial role of not only getting you victory points, but also still raining down a horrendous amount of fire onto the enemy. So I mean, yeah, there are some very great key stratagems that will help you to get the most out of your Inceptors, keep them alive, and help them to contribute over the course of the game in as many ways as they possibly can. But which chapters can help improve them even more? Well, first off, we have to jump to the Dark Angels, because Dark Angels absolutely love Inceptors. Not only because of the chapter tactic that means if your unit hasn't moved, you get to add +1 to the hit rolls, so that means that once your Inceptors are set up where they need to be, they can be firing at 2+ to hit for the remainder of the game, but also on the turn that you deep strike, although you wouldn't normally get that benefit because you count as moving when you've deep struck, if you use another Space Marine stratagem, Steady Advance, then you can deep strike in and still count as having not moved. So you can still make those tasty 36 shots at ballistic skill 2, which is quite frankly amazing. And of course, the other reason that Dark Angels love Inceptors is their unique Weapons from the Dark Age stratagem, which for 2 CP lets you add +1 damage to plasma weapons. So now your plasma exterminators can potentially be putting out 36 shots, hitting on 2s at strength 8, -4 AP in turn 2, and at a flat 3 damage, which, let's be honest, is pretty much enough to delete anything in the game, and even puts a good 20 or so wounds on an Imperial Knight in one single shooting phase. The Imperial Fists are also pretty decent for Inceptors, not only getting rid of the pesky light cover that your enemies may be trying to take advantage of, but the bolter variants get the benefit of the Siege Master's trait, so that each roll of a 6 to hit scores an extra hit. So with a guaranteed 36 shots with your assault bolters in a squad of 6, that should on average net you an extra 6 hits on top of that. And if you want to take it a step further, their bolter drill stratagem lets you double that for 2 CP, so each 6 is scoring 2 additional hits, meaning that your squad of 6 Inceptors could be getting a total of 48 hits with their 36 shots. Their super doctrine, the Legacy of Dawn, also affects the plasma variants and grants them an extra point of damage in the Devastator doctrine if you are firing at vehicles, which is very nice and can again get you up to that very useful 3 damage per shot, which really will help you to melt through enemy tanks and vehicles. Next up we have the Salamanders, who can add a bit more durability to your Inceptors with the Forged in Battle trait, letting you count -1 AP attacks as 0 AP instead, so that will help to keep you alive against bolt rifles and heavy bolters and autocannons. And then of course you have the reroll wound roll when you're chosen to shoot or fight, which is just a very handy cherry on top, especially if you're opting for the plasma variant of the Inceptors. Another chapter that does a pretty good job with Inceptors is the Iron Hands. With 3 wounds, having a 6-up shrug is something that will genuinely help to keep your models alive for a little bit longer. It's not game-breakingly huge, and I don't think it's as good as the Salamanders or the Imperial Fists or the Dark Angels by any stretch. But if you are holding a key objective, then coupled with transhuman physiology and unyielding in the face of the foe, that 6-up shrug will make them really quite a tough nut for your enemies to crack. Another chapter that adds durability to the Inceptors is of course the Raven Guard, whose Shadow Master's ability gets you the benefits of light cover if you are more than 18 inches away, or you get the benefits of dense cover for that tasty -1 to hit if you are more than 12 inches away and in or on a terrain feature. So again, it's not bad. I would say that the first part, the benefit of light cover for being 18 inches away, will almost never come into effect because your gun's 18 inches, so you're almost always going to want to be within that distance anyway to fire. But having that -1 to be hit if you are again holding an objective back in your deployment zone will help to keep them alive for a lot longer. And Raven Guard also have the very lovely Infiltrator stratagem, which for 1 CP basically lets you get a much better deep strike. It allows you to keep your Inceptors on the table for turn 1, so you get their firepower right from the bat, and then you can make a move up the board with their 10-inch movement to get them exactly where you need them to be. The final chapter to mention with the Inceptors is the White Scars, who, due to Inceptors having assault weapons, get a bit of benefit in that they can advance and still fire with no penalty, which does push your Inceptors to a possible 16-inch move, so that is very handy for getting them around the board and claiming objectives. And then on top of that, they do have the Fainting Withdrawal stratagem, which can help if your Inceptors get tied up by an enemy squad. Being able to shoot after you've fallen back is a really nice little bonus that they actually lost going from 8th edition to 9th edition, so being able to get that back for 1 CP is definitely something that you will appreciate on the times that it comes up. Overall, I think that a squad of 3 to 5 Inceptors, armed with either the Assault Bolters or the Plasma Exterminators, is a very good pick for most Marine armies. They have a good number of wounds, good toughness, and they have some great support in the form of their stratagems, so they can be quite fantastic little objective holders who can still pump out a huge amount of firepower, and then they also have the mobility to be able to avoid most enemy units that they don't want to be getting too close to and that may tie them up in melee. The bolter variants are actually pretty decently priced, I think. The plasma option can get a bit pricey if you bring a bigger squad, and let's be honest, they do absolutely need support from something like a captain or another HQ character that can give you rerolls if you plan to overcharge them. But especially for chapters like the Dark Angels, a squad of these guys can easily take out 2 Predators or 2 Redemptor Dreadnoughts in a single shooting phase if you buff them up right. So even as a suicide squad, you may cringe at throwing 300 points away for a 5-man squad with plasma, but if they can take out 400 points of enemy armour and then still require a big chunk of your opponent's force targeting them in the next turn to kill them, I would say there is honestly some merit in bringing them just to wipe out a few key units and then acting as an ultimate sacrifice and ultimate distraction carnifex to keep the rest of your army safe as it maneuvers into position for some more charges on turn 2 or turn 3. But what do you think? Do you think Inceptors are worth a slot in Marine lists? And if so, which weapon loadout do you think is best for them? And which chapter do you think they perform best in? Let me know in the comments below, and as always, thank you very much for watching. Please do like and subscribe for more Warhammer content from me. But until next time, I'll catch you later, guys.